Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gary Westbrook from Tarleton State University. I'd like to welcome you back to the afternoon session. We've got some great stuff going on. He doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I just want to thank Barry Hauser for all the work that he did to set up this. He would defer to the committee, but he did a great deal of work. And so, Barry, thank you from the committee and from all of CBDNA. I'd like to bring forth that they need no introduction, fresh off their Sudler win, but presenting our next session is the Director of Athletic Bands, Adam Gumble, and the Associate Director of Bands, Greg Martin from Westchester University. Guys, take it away.
Thank you, Gary, and thanks to all of you out there who are tuning in virtual land. In the essence of time, I'm going to take just a couple of moments to give everyone who may not know about our university program some brief information, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague Adam for more specific details regarding one of our potential plans that we have for the upcoming year. Westchester University is a Division II school of approximately 15,000 undergraduate students, 3,000 graduate students, and is located almost exactly 25 miles due west of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Wells School of Music has a significant music education focus and influence in the state of Pennsylvania with over 400 music majors and 100 graduate students. The marching band has 325 members. We have 2 directors, 2 graduate assistants, and about 12 professional staff members that assist us in the areas of percussion and color guard. We usually learn a traditional pregame show every year it's the same show all season. And then we do one drum corps style show that we perform at 3 of the 5 home games. Sorry, those of you in Division I, yeah, we just have 5 home games. We also do 2 additional shorter shows at those 2 remaining games, one usually for Alumni Day and one for Veterans Day. And then we do anywhere from 2 to 3 exhibitions around the Northeast at high school competitions. The class is a 1-credit class for the students, and we meet 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 2 hours a day. Each music ed major is required to take 2 semesters of marching band for the winds and percussions, and it's pretty much optional for all others. This yields about 140 to 150 music education majors in the marching band, and the remaining 175 to 185 coming from all of the majors on campus. This past spring, during our normal spring staff meetings, which obviously became virtual very quickly, we made a conscious decision to make our planned show for this fall shorter than we normally do for a variety of reasons, but mostly to allow if there's no preseason camp or if there's a shortened season. We also brought up and discussed how do we keep our music education majors on track should we have to go all online or virtual and not be allowed to have a marching band in the fall. We didn't want them to fall behind, especially the 1st and 2nd year members, because that wouldn't be fair to them. Likewise, how will we address the needs of the remaining 185 students to keep them engaged and feeling a part of the band family at Westchester? Some of the challenges we identified was how to run virtual clinics and auditions over the summer months. We've heard lots and lots of great ideas about this so far. How to keep communication as energized and frequent so as to make sure all new members felt like part of the band family, and leadership training for our current student leaders. Like everyone else, we're also struggling with how to get equipment into the hands of the mellophones and the tubas and the baritones. And we're currently still kind of at a stay-at-home order from our governor of the state of Pennsylvania. A final decision was made to take the learning outcomes that Adam and I hope our students are obtaining through a normal marching band season and try to translate them into what they need to be highly successful music educators. This includes the math and science major who, when teaching at a high school, could, as an educated musician, volunteer to assist their high school marching band staff. We've heard some really great sessions outlining scenarios and plans for the fall, particularly with Brian Britt's A, B, and C plan yesterday. But what if we are faced with an all online and no face-to-face situation? After Dr. Tim's great uplifting, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but what if we have to be online? What then? So I'm going to turn it over now to my dear colleague and friend, Professor Adam Gumble, to explain kind of what we have come up with as a possibility and how we are approaching the summer.
Thank you so much, Greg, and thank you to CBDNA for the invitation to present here. Greg provided a fabulous overview of our program, and I think it's important to note that in addition to serving as an outward-facing source of school pride at Westchester University, we look at the marching band as a student-centered educational program that really focuses on the development of the future leaders of our society. So all of our students and all of our programs are going to have a future as leaders. So we really try to provide ownership and opportunity for all of our students by involving them in the process of planning and implementing instruction and policy, even in a normal year, not a crazy one like this. So with that said, they're used to having a seat at the table when developing ideas for our program. And we've developed trust that's really needed for them to take strong ownership in this environment for all of us to succeed as we move forward. So I'd also like to give a big shout out to Brian Virt on a killer presentation yesterday. If you're viewing this in an asynchronous environment, I'd highly recommend checking that session out. And I think these two do partner together quite well. Brian referenced Simon Sinek and talked about finding your why. And that was really a critical first step for our staff and student leaders as we were confronted with this new reality. Why do you love band, and why do you love this band? Those are really the first questions that we had to ask. And not surprisingly, we found that, yeah, performing's cool, but this is really all about relationships, the relationships we have with each other, relationships that we have with our staff, relationships with our community, relationships with our traditions and our culture. So our pathway forward over the last, I don't know, weeks has been and will continue to be relationship centric. So since the future is unknown, we also made a concerted effort to focus on controllables and how relationship building can be modified for delivery in this kind of virtual modality that we find ourselves in. Organizations are networks of relationships, and relationships are always formed through conversation. So communication really became the first priority. We think that negative thoughts and fear often fill the gaps created by absence of communication. So we've prioritized engaging in positive conversations that have really been a priority for the team. And that positive communication, we feel, should demonstrate care. Rather than form emails, blanket correspondence that we might usually be engaging in right here, right now. Our students and staff are reaching out to individuals to try to get to know their individual cares and concerns and really forge an empathic viewpoint, which will help serve their relationships and strengthen connections and build trust, right? And trust is the bedrock of safety, and safety is the foundation for culture. And culture breeds commitment. So that commitment to one another is really what's going to help carry us through turbulent times like these. And all of those elements really feed into the creation and cultivation of the sense of belonging. And that's easy for our students who have already gone through our programs, our returning members, but trying to make prospective members feel that sense of belonging was really the challenge. So we're really trying to invest positive energy, demonstrated through care and communication, trying to treat each person as unique and valuable, and really emphasize future orientation, providing signals at every opportunity that our relationships are going to continue through this current pandemic and into an in-person and IRL future together. So all the efforts that we've had have been focused on engagement and fostering a sense of belonging for prospective members while providing opportunities for returning members to take ownership of the process. We found that this approach has already yielded fantastic results. Starting a YouTube channel, the students wanted to create videos to serve as introductions as well as instructional aids for prospective members. So we started a YouTube channel. Members have been creating Ram Band Way content for the channel. And these videos focus on both the how we do things with fundamentals like how to hold the horn and step outs and how to produce a quality sound and stuff like that, as well as the why, which is most important right here, right now. Why do we do things? Students sharing their why do you love this bands, as well as introducing prospective members to our core values that we employ as an organization. This content is all created, produced, and shared and curated by current members, and we're extremely excited about the level of engagement that this has created. Our drum majors have been organizing Zoom Hangouts that we've talked about those throughout the course of this symposium. They've been very well attended, informal, student-run and student-owned, to engage prospective and returning members. We found that these have been great for relationship building, as well as providing a space for Q&A. I've learned about Kahoot. I had no idea really what that was, but apparently it's way cool and kids dig it. So we've been doing that quite a bit. It's been super popular and the reviews have been stellar. So that all led up to our first virtual camp that we hosted this past weekend. It was a synchronous 2-hour-long camp held this past Sunday. Normally we hold these camps in person and allow student leaders to engage in fundamental training and relationship building with prospective members. And normally we expect around 120 students to attend. However, this past Sunday, we were thrilled when we had 193 students in attendance. We started with a quick 10-minute group session with Greg and I, and then broke into sectionals. Our student coordinators led activities and subsectionals, where our music and visual section leaders provided instrument-specific instruction, ending with some inspirational words from our drum majors. And we felt like everyone left more connected and, again, excited about our future together, whatever that may be. And proactive is always better than reactive, which is always better than inactive. We've heard amazing suggestions by colleagues outlining different strategies for the scenarios that might be in place as we move forward. We're absolutely in an environment where we have more questions than answers. And it's been incredibly informative, and I've been inspired over the last day and a half just learning from all of you. So we're really hopeful that we'll be able to take what we've learned here and engage our Westchester University students in person this coming fall. And we feel equipped with a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. But as Greg said, we're here to present an idea for plan D, virtual marching band, entirely online. And I think some of us may be facing this reality in the fall. So I do want to emphasize quickly that Westchester University has not made any decisions regarding this coming fall, nor is this model that we're presenting really a model or fully formed. These are just ideas that we've been kicking back and forth that may possibly aid folks in developing a plan D, plan doomsday scenario, should you be forced to remain in the online environment. So as we started to put this together, we were very clear about the fact that this isn't actual marching band. We want to find a way to provide an experience if we're forced to remain in a distance learning scenario. This sort of programming would be designed to be value add for our music education students without the need to modify their degree progress, as Greg mentioned. We've also engaged in conversations with students that have indicated there will be interest in this model, quite a bit of interest in this model from non-music majors as well. So we want to provide opportunity for our students to engage with our amazing professional staff. And we want to look to provide opportunity as well for learning outside of a student's major performance area in an effort to give them choice and experience in areas of marching band that would make them more well-rounded educators and probably more empathic participants when we get back together. We want to look to service learning opportunities in the name of mutual aid for our students, as well as our future students who are in public school programs living in our immediate area. And we want to make sure that we invest in the present, but orient toward the future. Once again, maintaining that future orientation by continuing to strengthen relationships, build skills, and be guardians of our culture that has been cultivated over the past many, many years. So we want to make sure that this isn't just a glorified marching band techniques course. So we continue to look for ways to make this valuable, a valuable version of marching band that could utilize the talents and experiences of our educational team, provide choice for students, and embrace opportunities for relationship building outside of our organization. So what could this look like? The hypothetical curriculum that we've put together would break marching band down into 3 primary domains. We would have foundations, pedagogy, and design. And each domain would include a fundamentals category. So those fundamentals would be compulsory for everyone in our program to experience and provide breadth to the experience, as well as cognates, which would be chosen by students and allow for greater depth in specific subjects. Fundamentals be taught by Greg and myself, while cognates would take advantage of the expertise of our professional staff. Students would choose 2 cognate subjects in each domain, one of which would be in a non-major area. So the foundations domain would be considered entirely fundamental, as our students should all have an understanding in each of these areas. These fundamental components wouldn't be delivered entirely via synchronous Zoom lecture. We know how tiring that can be, but could utilize a combination of synchronous and asynchronous instructional practice that would introduce students to information and different technology relevant to each subject that could be used throughout their future career. An hour-long lecture about communication is likely less effective than a short video that can be viewed asynchronously with experiential or project-based learning that would incorporate the use of different communication apps like Band or Remind or Slack. The pedagogy domain would really serve as a mini course in instructional techniques and materials. Students be presented with instructional fundamentals of scaffolding that can be applied in any context, marching band or otherwise. Students will be presented with the broad strokes in marching, basic marching technique, the look-fors in a visual ensemble rehearsal, the listen-fors in a music ensemble rehearsal, and be equipped with strategies on how to put it all together when they're dealing with a full ensemble. Students would be able to elect cognates that focus on techniques unique to specific sections of the band that would allow for experiences in areas that are foreign right now, and hopefully allow them to view situations through an empathic lens when they re-engage on the field. We all know that developing a field show requires a great deal of care and coordination, so we would want our students to gain fundamental understanding of that process. We'd be looking at the process of visual design and experience crash courses in electronic sound design and indoor pageantry, developing a basis for analysis and critique. All of these requirements would be compulsory for all of our members. But then design cognates could include more specific areas, broad strokes with regard to visual design and music arranging that would foster a deeper appreciation in the products that we're all putting out, or maybe just be a spark that would ignite some additional creativity in our students that might lead to future innovators in our activity. So a sample calendar is provided here. In this version, we set Monday aside for fundamentals instruction, while Wednesdays would typically be for cognates. Friday could be a flex day. Students might engage in some cognate work, engage in peer mentorship programs, which will be essential in this kind of environment, or engage in service learning opportunities. And local programs are definitely going to be in need. Our students might be able to provide assistance. In this sort of environment, we would definitely be calling upon, if we are online, chances are folks in our immediate area are going to be online as well. So we're gonna need all hands on deck to provide supports for those folks. We had a call last night with 8 of our local directors in an effort to hear their cares and concerns that are unique to their programs, and to have discussions that could provide support that may be mutually beneficial in this environment. So if you're a public school educator that's viewing, consider reaching out to the collegiate programs in your area and see if there might be some outside the box sort of strategies you would be able to employ, embrace now and maybe even employ in a non-virtual future. So thanks again I know this was fast and furious, but thanks again for the invitation to present some of these ideas here today. I'll kick it back over to M. Gregory to wrap up and hand off.
Thanks, Adam. Like he said, I just want to remind everybody that this is just a not fully fleshed out plan. It's just we're coming up with this plan D just in case. Right now, our location in Pennsylvania is still under lockdown, where other areas of Pennsylvania are starting to open up. So we figured we better get ahead of the curve, just like so many people are doing and have been talking about. So we're done with our portion. I will now turn it over to Brooke Johnson to introduce our next two presenters.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Adam. That's awesome information. We're all, I think, gonna be looking back at this presentation, depending on how things look for the fall. So up next, or first off, my name is Brooke Johnson, and I am the Director of Athletic Bands at Miami University in Ohio. And it is my pleasure to introduce my colleagues at University of Minnesota, Betsy McKinnon, Lance Sample, and Syressa Lewis. Welcome.
Brooke, thank you so much. And thanks for being here, everybody. We're really looking forward to chatting today. So to start off, my name is Betsy McCann. I'm here from the University of Minnesota, and I'd like my colleagues to introduce themselves as well. Dr. Sample, do you want to go first?
Sure can. Thank you very much, Betsy, and thank you, everyone. And thanks to CBDNA for having us on, inviting us to present to you all today. So for our segment today, or actually we'll pass it on to Syressa. Is Syressa on before we start?
I am. Thank you, Dr. Sample. My name is Teresa Lewis. No, you're fine. My name is Teresa Lewis. I am one of the color guard instructors at the University of Minnesota. I also work in our student unions and activities area, overseeing the 1,000 student groups we have on campus.
Thanks, you too. So we're talking today about another aspect of being either fully virtual or mostly partially virtual, and trying to think about this as an opportunity to use our time differently. If we're not on the field, we're not in the rehearsal room like we normally would be, how can we make sure that the time we're spending with our students virtually is really meaningful for all of us? We know that as band directors, we do more than put on great shows, we educate great human beings. And we think this is a great opportunity to look at what we're doing in that arena and how we can use our virtual time to really maximize it for our students and for the greater experience they get with us. So I'm going to hand it over now to Lance to take us away with content.
Thanks, Betsy. So for our segment today, we are talking about implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the band program. And it is especially worth addressing this topic now with the recent tragic events that have occurred and are still happening here in the city of Minneapolis over the past few days. Our city is continuing to be in mourning by what has happened, and we want to say thanks to those of you who have contacted us and have expressed your condolences for our city and the victims of this tragedy. And as of now, as far as we know, we believe that all of our students and we all are safe. So again, we thank you very much. So here at the University of Minnesota, our mission statement embodies the topic we're discussing today. And I just want to read this statement straight from the text. And our mission statement reads, and I quote, "University of Minnesota, founded in the belief that all people are enriched by understanding, is dedicated to the advancement of learning and the search for truth, to the sharing of this knowledge through education for a diverse community, and to apply that knowledge to benefit the people of the state, the nation, and the world," end quote. Now, it's also worth mentioning that the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is the state's land-grant university institution of higher education designated by the state of Minnesota. And it's also worth noting that the university itself is specifically located on traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of Indigenous people, in that the University of Minnesota Twin Cities actually resides on Dakota tribal land that was ceded in the treaties of 1837 and 1851. So when we think of diversity, equity, and inclusion, one would think that it's all the same thing, so to speak, and in some ways it is, but the three terms vary by definition. So diversity by definition, includes but is not limited to race, color, ethnicity, nationality, religion, socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, mental or physical ability, and learning styles. Equity, by definition, is the guarantee of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all, while striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. And inclusion, by definition, is authentically bringing traditionally excluded individuals and or groups into processes, activities, and decision or policymaking in a way that shares power and ensures equal access to opportunities and resources. So the reason why we feel that it's important to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in an academic environment, and especially within a large group or organization, like a marching band or athletic band program like ours, is because the academic environment itself can become enriched and vitalized by having a diversity of perspectives. So only considering one person's opinion or perspective may be beneficial. However, we all know out there that when you consider the opinions of others, especially if they come from different experiences and backgrounds, they may be willing, and they may and will bring ideas to the table that can become true vehicle of progress for the organization and its people. And when people feel comfortable in bringing their full authentic identity into a collaborative space, the group as a whole thrives and innovates in having a compassionate understanding of one another and resulting in radical growth because of it. So a good analogy that I give all the credit to Syressa for, and that's on the next bullet, is that can be used to describe diversity, equity, and inclusion, is that in diversity, meaning inviting anyone to watch the band, inclusion is asking people to march on the field, and equity is making change to ensure that all levels of experience feel welcomed and included. Now, we all know that due to the potential changes to our fall semester and marching band season because of COVID-19, we, like probably everyone else, have been taking steps to plan for various scenarios based on the information we'll be receiving later this summer. So because of these changes, we are looking at alternative approaches to our instruction, like what Betsy said. And we have decided to seize this opportunity to delve into topics with our students that were possibly never addressed in their community. And this topic is especially important to address with our students so they can become greater citizens in and outside of the band. Since we are a large student organization with unified goals, we've been able to establish a culture that highly represents the university and our state with the utmost class, both in on and off the field. But we also constantly strive, and as an organization, to maintain a culture of camaraderie, friendship, and the feeling of band as a family within our program. We feel that that is very, very important, and we all know that that is true amongst everyone here in the interwebs throughout the country in other programs. I know that we can all agree that as band directors throughout the country, we have a unique opportunity in that we are able to encourage our students in a way that may not be able to experience in any other group setting, both on and on campus, which is pretty neat as well. Now, within our band program here, we have had some students softly suggesting us that they have had concerns in relation to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some students have expressed indirectly about occurrences, but not of detailed events or specific individual behaviors, which would be concerning to them and of course would be concerning to us. We've had some students experiencing or have heard on some occasions of what we know as microaggressions or brief verbal statements or behaviors that are hostile to a group of people that are primarily stigmatized. We have some students who have expressed that they feel alone at times because they may be the only person of a certain background, that they have a disability, or that they have a different socioeconomic status compared to their peers. And we also have noticed that there are some students who have an awareness when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they have difficulty with knowing the vocabulary to be able to use or be able to address specific issues to us and to their peers. So we feel that it's necessary for us to address this topic head on so our students can have an awareness and knowledge of this subject. And we want them to complete their time here with us, reassuring the fact, that we were able to educate them and give them the necessary tools in becoming outstanding citizens of this country. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Betsy to discuss what outcomes we're expecting from addressing this topic with our students.
Thank you for that, Lance. So the three of us got together and we started talking about what are the outcomes we want to see from our band. And I would encourage anyone listening to think about this, whether or not you plan on doing any DEI training. I think it's worthwhile to think about, in this area or others, what would I want to see ideally my students and my staff have? So we came up with this list here for short-term outcomes. We want to make sure that our students and our staff just understand the work of DEI. You know, many of them probably won't know what DEI is until it's spelled out, what the acronym stands for. We want them to understand why it's important, some of the background that Lance just illuminated, and why this is something that's important for us to talk about in band, and why this is a place we can do that work. We want them to have the vocabulary and the skills to, and as Syressa will talk about a little bit more later, this can be a really difficult conversation, and a lot of people are going to feel very uncomfortable because our students, of course, come from all kinds of different backgrounds, and they bring all kinds of different personal experiences to the band. And I think most of them know enough to know that their experiences don't match everybody else's, and it can be scary to go into that discussion not knowing where everybody else is coming from. So we want to give them the words, and we want to give them the skills to be able to have that discussion and understand that path. We absolutely want members of groups that are underrepresented in our band to feel welcomed, to feel valued, to feel like their voice can be heard in the band. And as we all know, oftentimes students' experiences in our bands then go out and show their experiences in their greater institution. How they feel about the university or the school is often how they feel about their time in the band, and we represent that care institution. Additionally, in the college setting, our students come from so many different areas of the school. In our band, in our case, we have over 100 majors represented in the band. So if we can use the band as a vehicle to help them with this process, then they can bring that elsewhere on campus and help other students in other areas get the same kind of introduction and hopefully that same feeling. The other thing we hope happens immediately with our work in DEI is that our staff and our student leaders, as we'll do some extra training with those student leaders and with staff, will feel more aware and be able to address issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion. One thing that we talked about, the three of us, as we were planning, is what we've been aware of and what students have brought up to us as issues. Like Lance said, you know, a student will come into my office and say, you know, I've just been noticing some language going on with this group of people. One thing Syressa mentioned is that she often sees little things happening they're completely oblivious to and completely unaware. And we want our students to be aware. We want them just to have that knowledge, to see things that are going on that could make somebody feel uncomfortable or could make somebody feel excluded. They don't have to be an expert in then knowing what to do and training everybody else, but they do need to see that, and they need to know where to go to get to that next step. Now, looking longer term, there are great outcomes that we hope come out of this and that we're really looking for. And in some ways, these are some of the things that people think of first. We want to make sure that our band accurately reflects the community in which we live. We want to make sure that potential future members of the band see themselves belonging here, and they can look at our band and be inspired and think, I can do that someday. And oftentimes that's because they see someone who looks like them, or that they can see themselves in that band. And I will say that there's somebody there who looks kind of like you isn't enough to make you feel like you can belong there. We need to do this work of DEI to make sure that that connection really happens. We also are really looking forward to creating some partnerships on and off campus. And this could look a lot of different ways. We've talked about partnering with student groups at our school. So maybe we do something with the Black Student Union or with our Somali student group. Maybe we look at the local high schools and what high schools in our area are not well represented in our band. How do we partner with them? How do we bring them into our events? Does this mean we can sponsor bands who currently can't make it to our high school band day? Can we sponsor them to come to high school band day? Do we need to do more work than we're doing now with sending students out, sending us out to various schools? And how do we engage with our area to make sure that we're doing some of this work outside of the band? So step one, we're talking about the training in the band and getting our students speaking this language and working with this. And then, now, many of you know Lance, many of you know me as the two directors of the marching band. I would wager that not many of you know the next person who you're going to hear from, and this is Teresa Lewis. As Teresa said, she's one of our color guard instructors, and she also works at the University of Minnesota in our student union. She works specifically with student groups, and Syressa and her colleagues have a lot of training, a lot of background, and a lot of practice with DEI training and working with college students in this area. And her work teaching leadership in our band has been absolutely outstanding. And it's a complete natural progression for her to be working with the DEI training now too. So I'm gonna welcome Syressa, and she's gonna talk about how we're gonna do some of this.
Thank you, Betsy and Lance. I, like Betsy said, I mean, I work at the university and I work with student groups quite often. And the best part about the band, as a lot of us know, right, is it is this really intimate setting. We get to know a lot about each other that students don't experience in every place that they exist on campus. And so when we're thinking about leadership and how we can approach it with this group, I think the three of us kind of talked about this is a real opportunity to have students who are already in a vulnerable space of understanding, have them approach this content. And so when we're thinking about methods for engagement, one thing that we did this spring with some of our drum major training and audition process, and something we use quite frequently with our student groups, is we want to center this engagement around the social change model of leadership. And the social change model, it really embraces the values of an individual, the values of a group, and the values of a society or community, and how all of those things flow together to make change. As Lance said before, thank you for reaching out about what's going on in our city right now. I think this is a perfect example of understanding that our students exist in more than one place, and that coming to marching band can be a safe and brave space, but it also doesn't protect them from what's happening in the community. And so this is a real experience to kind of blend all those pieces together. So as we're thinking about the social change model and how we want to engage students in the work, the other thing that's really important is to center individual students and where they are in their journey in the conversation. It doesn't work if we talk at them. It doesn't work if we expect them all to be in a specific place and have expectations. It's really important to let them know that wherever they are right now with this work is where it's okay to be, and that will help them move through a journey that's specific to them and really helps them work on their own challenges or the things that they are most uncomfortable with. And so when we're thinking about those methods for engagement, we talk about lots of different options. So we have open-ended and community discussions as one of our goals. I think it's important to give students a space to speak. It's also important to recognize not everyone's going to be comfortable in that space for a variety of reasons, either because they feel like their identity is on display, or they may feel a certain amount of tokenization, especially at a predominantly white institution. And so we also want to give other spaces such as discussion posts or other methods for varied student interactions where students maybe can interact on a one-to-one level or with the instructors or directors themselves. Student reflection is also really important. Giving students a chance to think to themselves and talk to themselves about where they are is important. Not everything in this work has to be about tell me where you are so I can tell you where you should be. Some of it is just about letting students reflect on their journey and process internally. Student assistance with developing the content and curriculum will be really important. As Lance mentioned, there are students who have brought things to the director's attention that they would like addressed or just want to be considered moving forward. And so getting that student input can be really valuable, especially in buy-in, in getting students to feel like they're part of the process. And to be honest, if students feel like they are comfortable, and if we feel like they're in a good place, we may ask them to be involved in potentially presenting or facilitating curriculum, because as we know, a lot of band is a student-led experience. And then soliciting ideas from students. So it's always important to keep in mind, if we're talking to them about one thing and they're already somewhere else, that won't work. We want to make sure they're engaged throughout the entire process. And then finally, the last thing to consider for us, I think, is just there's not one perfect way to accomplish this. We can't just say, okay, let's do a 1-hour conversation and then we're done. You should know everything and be perfect, and there will never be issues again. We all know that that's just not how students or people in general work. And as Betsy said, we're in the business of making good human beings. And so one of the best parts and opportunities, especially this fall, is that through varied interactions and through multiple touch points, it starts to feel like an excellent opportunity. We're not just teaching students about the content, we're teaching them how to incorporate this into their everyday life and practices, so that when they move into the workforce, when they go into their personal lives and for the rest of their life, that hopefully this is something that they keep on their mind as an intentional practice that will help them and the people around them. So the next thing that we just want to talk about really quickly is, next steps to take. What does it mean to kind of kickstart this opportunity? And luckily, our staff is really diverse, as Betsy said. I mean, I operate with the band, and I also operate in another space at the university. We all, as a large institution, have a lot of touch points that we can reach out to. But the truth is, it's a multi-step process for all of us. We're at whatever institution you're at to figure out how to make something like this happen. And so the first steps that we've taken, as we've mentioned, are just to sit down and reflect. What do we need? Where is our program right now? What are the conversations that we should be having that we aren't? And then the follow-up step to that is just, what are our goals and outcomes? What do we want to get out of this conversation? I firmly believe in all my work with student groups, if my goal is to go in and say, well, I'm going to teach them about DEI, that's not sufficient. I have to know, like, what do we want our students to get out of this experience, which as educators, I think is always our priority. So when we think about who to contact them on campus, I don't think there's any expectation that we are the ultimate experts in this work. Our goal is to make sure we're partnering with people who really have experience. And so one thing that we always look to at an institution would be to recommend, talk to your chief diversity officer if you have one. Talk to them about what they've already implemented or what they would like to implement in the future. Additionally, a lot of co-curricular areas of a campus or, of a high school have a lot of space where they're already thinking about what are those learning outcomes beyond the classroom. So beyond academics or included in academics, what are some of those pieces that need to be woven in around culture and diversity and equity? It could include the dean of your college, or if you have a dean of student affairs, to work with them on what this means. And then a president or a principal. Obviously, we mentioned our own mission and the fact that we're a land grant institution. We always know that we're trying to tie things back to what the institution's goals are in the end, and buy-in from, the leader of your institution can be really valuable and important. I know at our school, in my department, like Betsy said, we've got the Multicultural Center for Academic Excellence, and then we also have Multicultural Student Engagement, which are the academic and co-curricular sides of multicultural education. So we work with them a lot on presenting DEI content. But in terms of just a few other notes, I know, Betsy, I think you have a few resources that you could share with this group specifically.
Absolutely. Thanks, Syressa. So I think this begs the question of, what is this actually going to look like in how we're teaching and what we're doing? And the answer is, we don't know. We, like many of you, don't find out for a few weeks what our academic year is going to look like, and if we're going to be fully, partially, not at all virtual in the fall. What we know is we are fully committed to teaching a DEI curriculum. We know we're going to start with staff training, then we're going to go into our student leadership team. We, in a normal year, would have a student leadership retreat, and we'd meet with them for a long weekend and whether virtually or in person, we're going to do technical leaders. And then from there, we're going to move this into the full band. Now, if we're in person, we're going to take days in band, and we're not going to get out on the field, and we're not going to get our instruments out and the flags. And instead, we're going to do sessions on this. And we'll have breakout sessions in groups. We'll have, whatever is allowed for us with social distancing guidelines and what's safe and healthy to do this in person. Additionally, if we're in person, we are going to have a virtual element. One thing that I have certainly learned teaching virtually this spring is that students whose voice isn't always heard in the in-person group may be more comfortable making their voice heard virtually. And if we have options for virtual discussion in addition to in-person work, we can get a lot more people more comfortable to contribute and let us know their thoughts and their feelings and their take on things if they're able to write it, and if they're able to proofread it and make sure it's fun, and if put instead of saying it in front of a group that brings in other elements for them. So if we're in person, we're going to do it in that way. If we're virtual, we can make it a more extended process for the full band. We'll still meet with our staff, we'll still meet with our student leaders, and then with the full band, it could be something that we embed into our curriculum throughout the fall. Much like what we just saw from Greg and Adam, they had Fridays planned as a day to do some community work. This could be something that we work on those Fridays, or however it may fit into the program. It can give us more time to be more in depth, more thoughtful, and really put some time into it when we don't have the pressures of a new field show every week or two, like many of us face throughout that fall season. So this is one element that we're talking about for a fully or partially virtually fall. And there are other things as well. So we're talking about DEI, and we're talking about other things that we feel like our students would really from, and we can help them as they move forward. I know that many of you, like I, fill out a lot of job recommendations for students, and you get down to those questions that ask, can these students work in a diverse space? How do we know? And this is a way that we can make sure that these students have the training. So think about the other things that are outcomes for your students when they get out of college, and what's something that you can help contribute to these students' lives that's also going to benefit the band and give us those band-wide and long-term outcomes that we're all looking for. So to wrap up quickly, this PowerPoint will be shared after the symposium, so you're welcome to have that. It does have all of our email addresses on there. You're welcome to contact any of the three of us with any questions or thoughts on anything going on in your area. We are absolutely open to that and happy to connect on anything there. I have not been looking in depth at the Q&A. Brooke, I don't know if you've seen anything for us or for look, unless you've got something, Brooke.
I don't think so.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Greg and Adam, and thank you, Lance and Syressa, for joining me here. And I hope that this session helps everybody watching think about this as less of kind of a doomsday scenario if we're fully virtual, and more of an opportunity to do something that we normally are not able to take the time to do. We all want to be doing band like normal because that's why we do what we do, and that's why our students are with us. But I think if we can look at this as a chance to be released from some of the pressure of always putting on that great show, our students learn a lot through putting on great shows, but I think that our students can learn a lot from us in other ways as well. We already have the community, we already have hopefully that respect to our students, and we can take care of that and go forward to bring them to new places where they're comfortable going in band. And if they're not, we're going to help them be comfortable and help them speak those languages. So thank you all for being part of this today, and reach out. Good luck to you all as you figure out how to do virtual band if that's where we go. Thank you.